9 o'clock. Are we all ready to begin?
Yep. You bet.
Jennifer, are you ready as well? Frank? Frank? Oh, Frank's on the phone.
Hello, anybody.
Zoom room to Frank.
Oh, he was on the phone, it looks like.
I was on the phone, sorry, commissioners, with Kathy Haig trying to get her onto the web link.
No worries, we'll forgive you.
Thank you. So if we're ready to go.
Ready.
Thank you, commissioners. Let's see, I don't see Renee on here. So the very first item will defer until she gets on. Review of the 2020 budget amendments for December 8th hearing. Jennifer.
Thank you, Frank. Good morning, commissioners. So we have for the 2020 budget amendments, the total increase to 2020 authorized expenditures in the general fund. What I had presented to you last week was $4,250,401. And that has since changed to $4,262,055 for expenditures in the general fund. And then for other funds, what I had presented last week was $22,770,570. And that has changed to $14,337,538. And that difference in the other funds is mainly due to the bond refunding entries. I had them going into the bond fund and into the enterprise funds, and we only need those to be in the enterprise funds. So so that's the main difference there. I know it looks really odd, so I thought I would explain that. And then the difference in the ending fund balances is in the general fund, an increase of $1,224,179. And that has also since changed to $1,214,179. And in the historical preservation fund, 116, an increase of $4,254. In the trial court improvement fund 135, a decrease of $25,000. And in the solid waste fund, this has since been added, a decrease in fund 402, a decrease of $65,000. And so that's on the face sheet along with those changes. And then going to the budget amendment details. Is there anything that was presented in the briefing packet? Do you want me to read off all of the entries on page 1 and 2, or how do you want to do that?
I'm good with just viewing it. Anyone else?
Yeah, Jennifer, I'll just take your lead, whatever you think is the most appropriate.
I mean, maybe just a little highlight over, let's go over the things that I've added that that weren't on the briefing packet that were emailed. So again, the bond refunding, the things in pink that I emailed, the line item 23 for the MCLTGO 2008 bond, that entry is being deleted. On line 25, that entry is changed from $7,621,856 to $1,936,303. And on the next line 26, the REIT 1 That is changed from 2,347,716 to 410,570. And that was due to taking out or not duplicating part of the Fund 250 entry. And then line 27, the Belfair Sewer, that one changed by $52. So that one is now 5,274,192 due to just rounding. The way that Leo had done the entries and the way I did, there was just a slight difference there. And then the other things that were added. In the general fund, we had line 28, $1,654 from AOC COVID funding for 2 laptops. And on line 29 for the clerk, an AFSCME contract increase of $10,000. They look like they're really tight on their expenditures, and they're going to need that money due to the contract increase. And then solid waste, their hauling revenue and expenditures are higher than anticipated. So I added in, and this is line 30, 300,000 to their revenue and expenditures after talking to them about it. And then line 31, solid waste, they need about 65,000 for their general services, Teamsters, salaries and benefits due to that contract increase. And then some of the highlights from the briefing item that was submitted, I would say is the CARES funding on line 7, the 5,211,000. So that's on the revenue side, and then on the expense side, 1,180,000. That's all of the contracts that we have done with PUDs and EDC and things like that. So that to me is a big highlight. So yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about this unless you have any specific questions about any of these.
I don't have any questions. Anyone else?
No, thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah, and so with that, is everybody good with having these entries go into the budget then on the resolution for next Tuesday, or the next Tuesday's meeting, the 17th, and then the public hearing on December 8th?
I am.
I'm good.
Great.
So Jennifer, just so one other question just popped into my mind. Do you anticipate this being the final supplemental for the year?
I do, yes, and that was the reason for the last minute changes, not just on the bond refunding, but adding in the clerk and the solid waste funds, just doing a last minute review of where I think everybody's going to be, and at a last minute.
If there are any significant changes between when we set the hearing next week and the date of the hearing, what would be our ability to accommodate those changes?
So I guess we could ask to change a number during the meeting, make that change. We could approach it that way. But once that resolution is set, then I think we're pretty much stuck with what we have said we're going to do.
Okay, yeah, and that's fine. I just, as long as you're comfortable with the level of communication between departments, that this is kind of it for the year, and they're aware of it, then that shouldn't be an issue.
Jennifer, do you mean once the hearing is set and the dollar amount is placed onto the publicized hearing?
Yes.
So there's always a possibility, Commissioner, if you're feeling uncomfortable with the number, that we could add more to the number that we just can't go over. We can come under.
Yeah, I'm not so much worried about that on our side. I just want to make sure that all the departments are aware that this is kind of the last train out of 2020 on budget supplementals. And, if we don't get it in between, on this one, then that's it. So everybody has to be kind of mindful of that.
Yeah, I did send out that email that told them that this was the last scheduled budget amendment. So as long as they read it and understood, then I think it was pretty well communicated.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. So next we have the Mason County financial report for October. Starting on page 2, we have the current expense revenue comparison. We have in the general fund at the end of October, we've collected $33,307,854. And at this point last year, we had collected $32,789,122, a difference of $518,733. And we're at 87% of our budgeted revenue. This point last year, we were at 91% of our budgeted revenue. Any questions by the commission before we?
So yeah, it's looking like it's a majority of this, a big chunk is still the treasurer's office. So it must be taxes coming in, or is there some other thing that's missing from that timber or anything of the like?
Interest, maybe? Interest income?
Yeah, interest is a big chunk of that component. Property taxes are down a little bit. Do you want to go, is there any other departments that you have questions on? Because that's really relevant to the treasurer's revenue on the next page.
Yeah, some of the other ones, I can see the sheriff's department is 44. Support services. That's an interesting one on support services, though. No, excuse me, never mind. Go ahead.
I think something kind of interesting on here to me is the auditor's office. They have some of the prepaid grants in that chunk. So that's kind of a big chunk of that 518,000 that we're over last year. That jumped out to me.
Jennifer, does any of this have to do with the CARES money also, and the other funding coming from the state and the federal government?
Oh, so not so much. Well, the auditor's office, I think some of theirs is CARES funding, but mostly I believe that's elections. Patty could answer that a lot better than I can. But as far as like CARES funding or CARES money going into non-departmental, there's really not too much yet. I believe we received 325,000 so far from CARES funding. So not a huge chunk of that is CARES funding. No.
If we can, let's go ahead and go back just a little bit and take a peek at some of these things. Because although the overall number is not bad, it's not good, but it's not bad. I'm looking at some of the uncollected revenue numbers that are staggering. Compared to last year. Look at 2 million difference in the treasurer.
Oh, in the treasurer, yeah.
181,000 in the district court.
Yeah, so now we're on page 3 and 4 of the treasurer's office revenue. So yeah, we're slightly down on the property taxes, and I think that was pretty well expected. We're, due to CARES, but really considering that's not too far to be off between the last year and this year on the property taxes.
Yeah.
Where we're really making up some headway is the sales and use tax. We're over 500,000 more than we were last year at this point. We're a little bit low on our city-county assistance compared to last year.
Break that one down a little bit, please.
The city-county assistance.
Yeah.
So that's $981,230 received this year. Last year we received $1,128,624.
And what's making the difference?
I'm not sure why that one is so far down. I'll look at that.
Okay.
Another place that is a little bit concerning to me is the road diversion. So if you look at the road diversion, it's on page 4 towards the bottom, 1,956,994, and at this point last year we were at 1,985,359. So that in itself is not too alarming, but what's a little bit worrisome is that all of the lines below that, the sale of tax title property, leasehold excise tax, all the way down to the rents and leases, DNR other trust, that is all part of that diversion. And so this year through October, we've received $2,057,821. And at this point last year, we had received $2,194,177. So we had already received our entire diversion amount of $2.16 million. And this year we still have, $100,000 to collect. And
How much did we have to give back last year?
we had to give back a couple $100,000, and I still need to give you commissioners that spreadsheet showing how much we've collected in years past. So I'll try and get to that today. But looking at what happened last year in November, we actually collected another 200,000 on the diversion. So I'm thinking that we're probably going to be able to collect our entire 2.16 million, but just something to point out, I guess. I just wanted to make you aware of that. So any other questions or comments on this before we move on to expenditures?
But last year we were about at the same, it says here, though.
Right, just on the road diversion line itself, but all of those other components underneath it, those lines also are part of that total road diversion, the 2.16 million. So all of that goes into the general fund and would otherwise go into the road fund if the levy was set without the road diversion.
Hey, Jennifer, I wanted to just thank you and Frank for helping me understand a lot of this as well. It's a big picture, but I truly appreciate all the hours that you guys are spending with me.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, it's quite a complicated thing, especially the taxes. So it takes a village, I guess, right?
Jennifer, two questions on the treasurer's side. We're at about 51% for interest and other earnings. Obviously, that's probably going to come in. How much more do you think? We're not going to hit the 800,000 we budgeted. Realistically, are we getting about that 21,000 a month in interest? Has that been pretty stable?
I believe so. I think since rates have dropped, yeah, we probably won't receive too much more than, maybe a little less than 500,000.
So we might finish about 350 short on the investment budget earnings there. And then the other one, we're at 43% on rents, the leases for DNR Timber Trust 1. What conversations have you had with the treasurer about, or anybody, I guess, really, about where that might end up?
I really haven't had any conversations since Sharon and I met earlier this summer. So, and then, the little bit that I talked with Lisa about it. So, yeah, I can follow up with that and see.
And I guess the other question, we'll probably get into this afternoon, but how are we treating that for 21? We didn't budget for it in 19, and came in at about 500,000, just under 500,000. That's what we budgeted for this year, 500,000, and we're not going to meet that. And so just how are we handling that going forward?
I believe that was one of the lines that we decreased in our budget for 21. But I'll check on that too.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But now, yeah, we budgeted very little of it though under the underneath road diversion. If you go to rents and leases DNR, there's some of the makeup there.
Yeah, and that is part of the road diversion. So really, I mean, that's completely separate from our DNR Timber Trust revenue for current expense.
Well, it just looks like we tried to capture it on the top, is what I'm saying, because we did nothing with it. 2,500 on the bottom.
Yeah, and I don't know why it's budgeted that way. With those lines on the bottom, that's something that the treasurer does, and I'm sure she has a rhyme and reason for that. But really, the 2.16 million is, the diversion. The rest of it is all part of the diversion as well. And I'll ask her about that, like why it's budgeted the way that it is when, the diversion. I mean, in my thoughts, we should not be budgeting more than the 2.16 million if that's what our intent is to, have that 2.16 million amount go to current expense from the road department. So I will research that and get back to you.
If I may, my recollection in conversations with the treasurer was that if we're going to budget a diversion of 2.16 million, he needs to record that 2.16 million into that account called road diversion. Subsequent to that, she has to take her allocations from taxes received and distribute them into rents and leases, timber tax, and all of those items that are below that item based on her allocation formula. And not knowing exactly how much she's going to collect, she can't estimate what she's going to collect in the $2.16 million account. So what she does is she just allocates the 2.16 million. I mean, she budgets for the 2.16 into that one account, and then her allocations drive the rest of those deposits, which she takes from the receiving of property taxes. And that's what we end up having to return at the end of the year, because at that point she's over collected and she doesn't want to underestimate how much we're going to collect. So she budgets 2.16, the amount of the diversion.
So does moving this, does changing that to a levy shift or part of it to a levy shift alleviate at least part of this issue?
Yes, it would. And really, like all of those lines really should have no budget in them, the 5,000, 53,000, because we zero those out at the end of the year. Or they're very close to zero when we do reversals in December for the collections through November. So So yeah, I think that's something that we should be fixing. So yeah, I'll talk to Lisa about that. But yeah, if we did the levy shift in lieu of this, we would have zero budgeted in all of those lines, I believe. And then the levy shift would just go into the property tax main line, the first line.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions or comments on this right now?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so moving on to page 5, we have the expenditures by department for current expense. And we are at $29,911,166 through October. At this point last year, we were at $28,069,885. And we are at 77% of our total budget, although we have spent $1,841,280 more at this point than at this point last year. So the departments that are over on their percentage, the auditor, emergency management, and over, meaning over their benchmark of 83.33%. The clerk's office is at 84. The courthouse security is at 85. All of those departments are included in our 2020 budget amendment. So hopefully that will be sufficient to get them through the end of the year with their budget authority. So any questions or comments on this?
Jennifer, is there any particular line on here that gives you more concern than others?
No, I mean, I think that I have looked at this pretty thoroughly for projecting out through the end of the year, and I feel confident that we have given enough authority. The departments that are over, like emergency management, that one, is due to that position, that temporary position, mainly. So I think that one's good. Yeah, I feel confident that we are giving enough budget authority to the departments at this time.
And I think that temporary position is being funded by FEMA, correct?
Yes, FEMA and possibly CARES. And then for next year, it'll be funded through FEMA and an EMPG grant, as long as you want to keep that position in the budget. And we can talk about that at 2 o'clock.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
Not for me.
I'm good.
Okay. So moving on to page, oh, did you have one?
Good.
Okay. Moving on to page 6, we have the specific revenue streams comparison. We have the community development revenue is up. Detention and correction services is slightly down, but it's not a significant amount. It's kind of, fluctuating over the years. The property taxes, again, are just slightly down. Road diversion property tax slightly down. County road property tax is slightly up. Current expense sales tax is way up. And criminal justice taxes and entitlements are up. And then we have rural sales and use tax funds are up. Basically everything is up besides the property tax and the detention and correction services. So that's great news. It looks like our REIT is really high at the end of October at $1,344,000, and last year at this point it was at $950,000. So
We can expect a big drop the next 3 months there. There's nothing on the market to sell to collect REIT from.
Okay.
Just a heads up there. And I don't see it changing for, Christmas and New Year's. And I don't know, I was shocked. I was helping somebody out the other day. Literally, there's nothing there.
Oh, wow. And what's really surprising is that our lodging tax is up at 406,000. That's
That's because everybody didn't want to stay in Seattle. They came here.
I can't blame them.
so. Any questions or comments on this? Okay. Moving on to page 7, we have the sales tax. The good news, we're at 5.527 million at the end of October. And if we continue on and receive exactly what we did in November and December of last year, we will be at 6.6 million in our sales tax collections at the end of the year, which is a record high. So that's great. For October, we received $653,529.82. This point last year, we had received $539,794, which is an increase of close to 114,000 for the month of October. So
Still can't help but wonder if there's any that's still out there for catch-up. Remember, they were allowed to keep and hold on to it for a while?
yeah, maybe. And, I tried to get that information and was told that Department of Revenue couldn't decipher that. So that is definitely a possibility. My hope is that everybody's shopping online, but, and it's a trend that will continue.
At least for a few more months.
Yeah. And okay, so moving on to page 8, we have the 6-year financial recap. For current expense cash, we're at 15,532,604, and which seems like a really big number, but if you look back 5 years ago at 10/31/2015, we were at 9,301,968. And that amount of money bought us a lot more than it does today. So just something to keep in mind when, we look at our cash balance and think that it's so high. It really relatively is, that could be spent off very quickly. So just wanted to make that point that, in 2017, I believe it was when we had at one point in time like 100,000 in current expense. I believe it was somewhere around there in the bank, and that's a point I never want to get to again. So I just wanted to make that statement before everybody sees our huge cash balance.
Prices do tend to change, don't they?
Yeah.
Go up and not down.
Yeah, I mean, we have, our union contracts and our, just everything's going up for sure.
So if I may interject for a moment, in October of 2015, we had that $9,302,000. That was about 25% of our adopted budget. Today, we're at 31% of our adopted budget, so it's only a couple of percentage points higher. But if you remember that $9 million when we got to October of 2017, and we got down to where the county had simply $150,000 in the bank of available funding shortly thereafter. That's why we had the budget reductions of 2017. So that 9 million in 2 years basically disappeared. So the reserve that we've built, albeit is a little bit higher by only 6 percentage points, can disappear in 2 or 3 years should the economy go south.
Yes,
So-
but at the same time, bear in mind also when we were looking at these numbers, they weren't as real as it would appear because you still had the 13th month back then too.
Right.
And
Correct.
that was always devastating to us. That and being able to keep aware of how much unexpended budget authority was going to come back. And that's what happened in 17, along with a few others.
Correct.
So for the recap, we're at 87% of our total budgeted revenue. And looking back over the previous 5 years, we typically were at about 90% at this point in time. In 2016, we were at 85. So we're at a slight decline compared to the previous few years. On our expenditures, we're at 77% of our budget, and that's pretty typical of where we have been over the previous 5 years. Moving on to page 9, our special and other funds, cash balances. We are at $33,993,131, and it also increased over the previous 5 years on our compiled special and other funds. So questions or comments before we move on to motor pool?
I'm good.
Okay. So on page 10, the last page, we have the motor pool and the ER&R budget to actual for current expense and health. And we are at, our budget is $695,441. We have spent $316,398 in the motor pool. And that is 46% of our total budget amount. Down at the bottom, we have our capital and upfit costs. So far, we've spent $156,000, and none of that is budgeted, but that is in our budget amendment to increase the budget for the motor pool upfits and capital. So questions on any of that?
Jennifer, what's that going to look like for our new rates and stuff coming up?
So that the rates were emailed to you, I want to say 2 weeks ago. I can find that date or send it to you again. But we do have, it's about 1.2 million, I believe, for the total between current expense and the sheriff department for all of the vehicles, which is, a big increase looking at this 695,000, but we're getting all new vehicles with that. So really that's not a huge amount compared to what it would be going through ER&R if we were to purchase all of those vehicles up front. So,
But and that is something we would keep in mind, but I still would like to keep track of the difference between ER&R, the old way versus the new way. Then we can decipher out the cost of the vehicles.
okay, yeah, and that's something I probably will not be able to get to before we adopt, I wouldn't think. I mean, I can try.
I'm going to keep a running total in my head on that stuff. It's going to be hard to even decipher how much was actually spent because that was spread around so much over there in roads. There's going to be parts you're not going to capture.
Well, that's something I'll work with Frank on to get a comparison.
Yeah, I'd just like to keep track over the next couple of years as we're going through this to see if it's what type of difference there is.
One of the big differences in the way we're doing it now is that we're spreading the cost of purchasing new vehicles over the term of the life of that vehicle. Previously, what we had to do was we created a bubble that required $1 million something just to purchase the vehicles in 1 year, and then on top of it paid for ER&R costs. So
Yes.
Jennifer and I will work on coming up with some sort of mechanism to track one versus the other, but keeping in mind that it's a 5-year program and the cost benefits are over a long period of time.
Well, that's going to be up to us to decipher out how much we would have expended without it, because remember, there's no guarantee you're going to spend and retrofit and bring up new vehicles every year. So, if we see the raw numbers, it'd be up to the commission just to look at it in the future and decide
Correct.
the benefits.
So that's all that I have.
Just a quick question on motor pool. So as we look at looking specifically at expenditures by object code, and I guess this would apply maybe throughout, but so where we see year-to-date expenses, is that January through October, or is that when we officially transitioned current expense to the lease in like March or April?
Yeah, that's the beginning of the lease. So that would have been March 1st.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions, commissioners?
Not from me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. So if I may go back to our first item, I see Renee's on the line. Renee, do you want to come up and talk about the attestation letter?
Thank you, Frank. Yeah, this is just the annual letter stating that my actual grant budget for the next coming year will not change by more than 20%. I don't see where that could even begin to happen. That's going to be a little over 60,000 that it's going to expect to change. And the only thing that I anticipate might be cost of living in the year, 2022, and we don't know. So I'm sure that's not going to be over 60,000 for the 1.5 employees that I have under the grant.
Just a correction, if I may. I don't have it here in front of me. I thought it was 25%.
Oh, it is 25%. You are correct. I don't have the letter in front of me either. So you are right. It is 25%. So then that 60,000 would go up even more. So I don't anticipate anything being that much of a difference. Any questions?
None for me, Renee. Thank you.
Okay.
No, thank you, Renee.
No, thank you, Renee.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you as well, Renee. Next item we have is a follow-up of the CARES Act funding. And I submitted a report for distribution updating where the county is. The material modification or update is on the CARES Act funding from Public Health. Public Health received $1,389,000 as well to spend through the end of December. And they have put forward a budgetary projection of what they would spend those dollars on. And Casey or Dave, I believe both of you are on. If you'd like to speak to how you anticipate and for what you anticipate spending those dollars to between now and December, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. I submitted the sheet to you, the new one, Frank, the revised one. And I didn't send it to everybody, so I'm hoping everybody got one in their budget stuff, materials.
Sorry, what I did was incorporate your numbers into this report.
Okay, out of the
Have it
2
from
point.
Friday.
The scoping notice for the EIS. You can sign it. And then I'll scan it. It's gonna it goes to the journal on the 12th. So I'm gonna get it up on our website on the 12th.
We can hear,
Cal.
yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry about that. Paperwork.
Okay, So under medical expenses, we had public hospitals, clinics, and similar facilities at 150,000. And that was additional testing for the hospital is what we're looking into for that. Temporary public medical facilities, that's 70,000. And we're looking into the possibility of moving that to building 10 for renovations. 100,000 for the COVID-19 testings, including serological testings, and those are additional test kits also. Communications and enforcement, and that's if there's 20,000 in there, and that's not, we don't really have it broken down that much, but we have spent a little bit in there, and it's just to help with communications, for getting the word out. We're going to do some advertisement there. Then we'll move down to medical and protective supplies. At our last meeting, 300,000 was to go to DEM to purchase $300,000 of PPE, and we're also putting an additional $20,000 in there that health can use to buy additional PPE. So that's a total of $320,000 for PPE. Quarantine individuals, we have $200,000 in there. And that's for right now, we are keeping hotels available. And so we're renting the rooms, and that's not very much of that, but there's also funding in there. If we do need to get building 10 or the school up and running as a shelter, we're gonna need funding available for that. Payroll expenses, we moved down from 400,000 to 309,000. And that's 64,000 a month. That's pretty much, that's the most that health has spent through there. And then an $80,000 retro pay on a position that we're trying to get moved into health and paid back through March. And that's a new position that's coming to health. And then there is a little bit extra for additional overtime if needed, and which would have been $37,000 additional dollars. We have $20,000 for food delivery to residents, and we're in talks with United Way to donate or however they provide their food pantries and such. And we have $100,000 that we're gonna use for, and we've already had them. We're in talks how we're gonna get the billing to us, or if that's gonna happen. But of that 100, we also have a blue beam for health and DCD upstairs, and it'll help people. It'll help them do the work from home and send it to us electronically. Then you have COVID-19 related expenses to the jail, and that's being looked into.
Casey, quick question for you. I appreciate you putting this together. On the blue beam component, we had, I think, voted to approve that last week. It is coming out of this, not current expense?
Correct.
Okay.
So if I can chime in, commissioners, on the medical expenses, public hospitals, 1A, and then so some of that we were looking at renting storage for PPE, because we have to have a obviously clean, dry, and preferably heated space to do that. We'll be talking to the court about our current location that has PPE that is supposed to go away as soon as the hospital moves some of their things around. So we're going to be doing that piece. And as well as we have cots that we got from the Red Cross. What we'd like to do is buy cots, increase our amount of cot capability, plus at least 4 sets of bedding per cot. So that rolls into that $150,000 as well.
And those cots are in the event we have to quarantine people. If we do get shut down again, we can use those cots in building 10 as well, because obviously we'll be shut down. So the course would be shut down as well, correct?
Right. And yes, So building 10 and the middle school gym are both part of our resources that we've been reporting to DOH. And the city is supposed to be looking at building 10 and making sure that it's in a place that it can be habitable within 24 hours.
And how close are we in that?
You know, I haven't walked through the building in quite some time, so I would have to go over there and see where we're at with that. I know the showers are out, would have to be put back in place. And then whatever other safety things the fire marshal might require of us.
Okay, yeah, if we could check on that, that would be great.
Okay.
Then we can either report back at the EOC meeting or at our next briefing.
Okay. Right, because that has to go into my weekly roster of resources that I provide to the state. Whether they're able to be occupied, and then whatever shortfalls we might have, whether it's staffing or food, bedding, those sorts of things. And those pieces are rolled into this budgetary piece.
So what about contracts like with the United Way for foods and things as a subrecipient?
Yeah, so we're working with, I got to get a hold of United Way and run that down and then run through Frank as well, and how the money actually would transfer to United Way to purchase those food kits that are available from the state. So the food kits are set up for one person for 2 weeks. So a family of 4 would need 4 of the food kits. And we purchase them, and we'd have to purchase them from the state, and then United Way would deliver them. So we just need to find out the mechanism by which either I purchase them through public health and give them to United Way to distribute, or do we get the funding to United Way to work those as well. And once this money ends, then that's going to roll over to Cascade Pacific Action Alliance to do that piece.
Great. I'm glad you're working through them.
Dave, can you talk a little bit about the 2A communication and enforcement? Are we intending to spend the money predominantly on communication versus enforcement?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
What kind of enforcement can you?
Really, our enforcement is in the purview of state Illinois. So those monies we really have set aside for communication. In fact, we are having materials printed today and laminated to go out to talk about the differences between colds, COVID, flu, and allergies as an example of places that messaging needs to get out. I mean, we are going into fall flu season, plus the rhinoviruses are hitting us now. So we have these symptoms that could cross multiple places. So we're trying to get the messaging out there on how to triage that and decide whether you need to go to the Mason County Triage Center for testing.
Thank you.
So, I'm trying to go over all these, and to be honest with you, it is a little harder for me to read. Frank, when a department sends you some of that stuff on their format, from my book, could you please make sure I get that in their format so I can try and read it? It's a little hard for me to read it on this one combined, okay?
Sure.
On the other, we need to make sure that we have a fallback for any of these things that are not going to be expended, and we need to look at this closely to figure it out, because getting reimbursement on wages and stuff is really important for our bottom line. So we need to be able to do that. We need to have a fallback position for anything towards the end of the month. We're closing in on this time where it has to be spent. So if it's not, we need to make sure we can capitalize on that with the wages for reimbursement, please.
Yeah.
Is this on the same? Is this particular group of CARES Act dollars on the same timeline as the general fund CARES Act dollars?
No, this funding goes through December 30.
Yeah.
Gives us a little bit more time. Also, Dave or Casey, did you also check on Wasalfo, the 15,000, why they are billing the counties?
Yeah, we're coming back to that discussion because it seems like we're paying Wasalfo for something they're already supposed to be doing for us.
Correct. Yeah, that concerns me. It's like, well, I don't want to speculate, but however, it seems fishy.
Well, and we're not the only county that has brought that forward, so you will hear more.
Great, thank you.
Jennifer still on here? No. On the 100K jail related cost, what does that look like?
Okay, so for the jail related costs, on their PPE, we've already talked with Chief Hansen, and we can bill CARES Act for anything that's above his normal PPE. So for example, he uses gloves all the time at a certain level. That hasn't changed, but his requirement for masking and and even for some N95 masking is above and beyond what he normally does. So those expenses are allowable. Plus any expenses we have to get testing brought to the jail is allowable as well.
And Commissioner, I am still on.
We're also
Hi.
looking at the nursing expenses, that's correct? Or
That's, I guess that was my question, Commissioner. Is also this going to also go for nursing and stuff as well?
right, because I do think that their duties have increased because of COVID.
Yeah, and they have hourly time that they can bill towards that. We can pay for that.
How about the care for the homeless population, the 80K? What is that, please? Can you break that down a little bit for me?
So on 4F, we pulled that out because we really had addressed that through the housing funds that we spent on Community Lifeline to improve the building. We put in the showers, water lines, those sorts of things, added more bed capacity, plus their sanitizing requirements that they had asked for. So we moved it from here into other places and then are addressing the homeless population through the housing grant.
Just so you know, you got to see this. This is the tiniest. I'm trying to see it. I just can't. I mean, it's tiny. Even with my glasses, it's tiny.
We need to get that added to your computer screen.
Yeah.
You can make it larger.
But then I couldn't look at your wonderful faces. So
Maybe we could put up 2 screens in your office.
Any more questions for public health?
no, just another comment, please. As we're looking at some of these things, I'm not sure they're going to be able to be truly expended. We need to have that fallback in place to capture every dollar. I don't want it going back to the state.
And I'll work back with Casey and with Dave to confirm what available dollars under salaries are available, that we can capture whatever shortfall in expenditures they may have.
So that number was calculated in part by looking at what our highest expense was for employee salaries at our last spike. Should we get another spike, and it's entirely possible, that money is reserved to shift people from their grant work that they're currently working on into COVID money.
No, and I agree with that. The problem is come December 15th, we need to be prepared to switch that thinking to capture that money because it has to be expended by December 30th, right?
Well, and that's why I was talking about the COTS and storage and those sorts of things that would set us up for success later on. We can purchase things that we need to set up quarantine and have that after CARES Act, if that's allowable. Like, for example, a pallet jack can move pallets of the material around once we get storage in place. So we have ways to address that would set us up for success, even if we have another natural disaster.
Is there any emergency management money that could be used for stuff like that, though?
That would come through emergency management's piece. It wouldn't specifically be on the public health piece. So the public health, alternate care facility is where it would more or less roll under.
Yeah, when I just think of COTS and stuff, I think about granting through the emergency. That's all I have for the moment. I've got to think this one through a little bit.
Okay, thank you, commissioners. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Casey. The next item we have is a revision to the contracts for the Boys and Girls Clubs of North Mason, as well as the YMCA. rather than run it through as a subrecipient, run it through the EDC as a subrecipient contract, we've modified it to be a contract directed and administered by Mason County, similar to the contracts that we had with the PUD, where the Boys Club or the Y would submit documentation of expenses that they incurred, COVID related, and then the county would reimburse those organizations, nonprofits, for what they expended in the time frame between March and November 30th of 2020. And the maximum amount is up to $15,000 for each.
And what's the time frame on that?
Since it's general fund CARES funding, it's only through the end of November. We would need receipt of the documentation by December 7th. We would then submit those to the Department of Commerce by December 15th, which is our deadline for turnaround.
All right.
I've had issue with some of this service just because I didn't know how much we could, with the old structure, the way it was set up, how much that we could literally do and not have it come back at us. This structure I'm very comfortable with. This is what I was hoping it was going to be set up with. The only question I would have is 15 enough? And I'm a tightwad, but at the same time, it's only to cover what they've already expended, basically. So I'm wondering if a little more couldn't be considered if we were to do this.
So I want to remind the commission that at this point of our funding, we've overspent our CARES money by $126,000 at this point in time. Now, remember, a big chunk of this is reimbursement. So we're collecting money back that we've already spent. So it's not like it's going to come out of our current ending fund balance, but we do have $126,000 more spent than what we are eligible for under CARES.
Yes, but at the same time, some of that is things that we've chosen and we've shifted from other areas.
Right.
This is one of those things I think this is what the money was meant for. So, you know, we didn't do anything wrong in our choices. I'm just saying.
We can definitely increase it if the commission so desires.
And I'm not even saying, I'm just saying for myself, I'd probably be more comfortable at the 20K mark. And if they haven't spent that money or can't, then they can't get it.
Right. Unfortunately, I think we can only, cover expenses that they've already occurred due to the guidelines from Commerce. Too bad they didn't give us a little bit more authority to help people that truly do need it. That's a little rant, sorry.
Kevin, I was saying, Kevin unmuted. I've been waiting.
Yeah, look, it's no secret. I think we could have done more if we had gotten this figured out a couple of months ago. This has been sitting for a long time. I do agree that this is exactly what the CARES Act is intended to do, is to help parts of our community that desperately need it. And so I'd be happy at the $20,000 level for both. It's incumbent upon them to provide documentation as to what it's there for. I'm sure if they felt that they had in August $75,000 worth of need, I'm sure they can come up with 20, without an issue. So I'll take the 15 for both, but I would love to see a little bit extra go to them, given how patient they've been and how long we've had to kind of drag this out.
So I'd be comfortable with the 20 also, just saying. So
would I.
There you go.
I'll make that increase, make that change, and then we'll bring it forward at the meeting on the 17th.
Can I interrupt for just a moment, commissioners? This is Jennifer. I just wanted to say that if we're going to increase those contracts to 40,000 total, then I should increase the budget amendment, line item 7 to be 1,190,000 total. And then that difference coming out of our ending fund balance.
For the supplemental and for December?
Yes,
Okay.
just to keep it consistent and correct.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Yep.
Good as well.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. Next item is the status of the Housing Authority. And I wanted to update the board on the conversations that we have had with Dave and with Tim Whitehead and legal counsel in regards to assisting the Housing Authority. First, I wanted to update the commission to let them know that the Housing Authority, as a independent county agency, does not fall back on the back of the county should it dissolve or should it not continue moving forward. However, that does not preclude the county from assisting the Housing Authority in getting through the difficulty or the issues that it currently has. And there are a number of options that we have available to help us through that process. So under RCW 3583-080, the county can help the Housing Authority with in-kind contribution to assist them either with a staffing increase or supplement, or an in-kind in dollars, and assist them either as a loan or as a grant. Under RCW 3583-050, the county has the authority to grant to the Housing Authority funds to assist it in its operations. We can also assist them in hiring either an outside attorney or an outside consulting firm, as well as assist them in hiring an executive director. One of the recommendations that we had talked about was appointing to the Housing Authority an ex officio board member that would assist them with managing their board meetings and assisting them in understanding their responsibilities and responsibilities for their service. So currently we have a request out for additional board members. We've received 2 applications. I thought we had a third, but I've confirmed we only have 2 applications. And we'll be moving forward with those coming to the board for appointment should the board so desire. So the question we have is, what, if any, does the board want to do, of these options, does the board want to work on today to continue assisting the Housing Authority in moving through its difficulties?
In order for the Housing Authority to move forward, don't they need a full board?
In order to act, they need a quorum, yes.
Yeah, not a full board, a quorum. And if we were to appoint these 2, that would give them 4 members anyway. And isn't it a 5 total?
It's a member of 5, that's correct.
So if we were to appoint, they would have a board.
But I think we ought to do that. I think we have 2 good candidates who step forward. But that only solves one part of the problem. The other part of the problem is how do they manage sort of the day-to-day operations of the Housing Authority. And so I would be interested in hearing thoughts. I know Randy or Commissioner Nolan, you were part of a small group that was meeting to discuss this. If we were to do a grant of sorts to the Housing Authority for staffing, how much would that be? Where would that come from? What are the, what's the upshot of doing that relative to other things that we've committed to funding on the housing side? What does that look like?
So now, as for myself and the things that we didn't get into the exact numbers, because I still would like to hear how much money they actually have to work with. In talking with Frank and others, they believe that although I'm more on the idea that this should be a part-time position in the very beginning, it needs to be full-time in order for them to overcome the things that they need to overcome and put things back into place. This is my personal opinion. I'd like to see us grant them a little bit of money for a couple of years or so, because I still would like to see them get on their own feet. If they had their structure together and they started moving some of the properties and making some of the changes that are necessary, they ought to have the money to be able to handle their own business. They've got certain options, such as how they have property managers now. There's other structures where it could be done internally with some of that same cash to get some of the things done. So I myself, I am supportive of moving forward. I just don't have the number, and I haven't heard the number from anybody, with some type of granting for them on a yearly basis, maybe for 2 years or so, to help them get reestablished. As for the ex officio thing, I still think that would be extremely beneficial to them, because it would create a connection between the county temporarily, but it would have to be temporarily. It's been established or told us that any commissioner that serves on it should not be voting, should take none of those responsibilities, because it puts the liability onto the county that we don't want. And for that to even be done, though, it'd have to be done by a bylaw change of their organization. And they can't do the bylaw change until we put a few people on the board. That's even if they want to do that. They may think that they can handle it again and go the same circle. I do think that they could use some help with, how things are done out there real estate wise, so they can go through and look at the different options of making some changes that might be beneficial to creating more housing in the future, instead of just trying to survive with what they have. That eventually will go collapse, because you can only keep something afloat for so long before it has to go public.
And to supplement that, to put numbers around the dollar amounts on a full-time executive director, fully loaded, you're looking at about $90,000 a year. On a part-time basis, it's about half of that, $45,000 a year. But again, given the circumstances that the Housing Authority is in today, it would need somebody full-time for some period of time to get through all of the complexities of their contracts and commitments and liabilities, which then can move to a part-time position over the long term. And Commissioner Netherland is correct. There's about $250,000 that's spent on consulting dollars on an annual basis. And some portion of that can be brought in-house under the Housing Authority and managed by an executive director, mitigating some of the cost that individual would incur the Housing Authority itself.
I'd kind of like to hear from Kathy too, and get her input on this as well, and then also talk about how would this person be funded, through a grant, or through, just kind of how would this person be funded?
Well, I think getting.
We lost you, Kathy.
You lost me?
There you go. You're back. Yeah.
Okay. I think it's a good idea. I think a 2-year position, I think it really only needs to be a part-time position, but if you want to do full-time, I mean, that's fine with me too. I am here for, I think, 1 more year. I'm not sure when my time is up, and I won't be going again on the board. So I think the most important thing is to have someone who has an office, has a phone number, has a file cabinet, an email, would really be a good start. And it's not that much work, but it's work that must get done. And I think that's the way to go. That's my opinion.
How much monies were there? We had talked in the past that there was some monies still available to use within the organization. Was it 30 something thousand, somebody said, or?
Within the housing authority,
Yeah, I remember 4 months ago, 3 months ago, we had that discussion, and there was some monies that are already available internally there.
there is some funding that comes through some of the taxes that the housing department within the public health sector collects, but those are have been budgeted in other directions other than towards the housing authority itself.
Currently, though, the housing authority has some money, though.
Yeah, I think it's in, ironically enough, I think it's Fund 666. Is where they're receiving some money through the treasurer.
Kathy, you're muted. There you go.
It's a little over 5,000 that's in the 666 account. We're getting about $200 a month income from the Cascade Management has in the budget that we approved. It's $200 a month, and I've been putting that into 666. So it's a little over 5,000 right now.
And just to update the board as well, both boards, I have been approached by the state auditor's office, and they would like to schedule an audit of the housing authority. And I've spoken to Zach Wilson, who is from the state auditor's office, to let him know that we will respond shortly. But I believe, Kathy, you mentioned that was a $9,000 bill the last time they audited. And that's generally what those dollars would be used for.
Why would we respond, Frank? We have no claim or anything on it.
I wouldn't. I'm sorry, misspoke there.
Okay.
I would respond that the county is not responding.
Okay.
But have the housing authority respond back to them.
You scared me for a second there. Thank you.
No, they did reach out to the county, and I told them that we would not be responding, that the housing authority would be responding.
So we actually, there's also a report that we're supposed to give to the county. I guess by, early in December sometime. I don't know what happens with that. Last year, Paige helped me a great deal with it. But we haven't spent any money. We haven't done anything. All we have is the 200 that comes in once a month. So it's pretty simple. The last time the state did the audit, Cascade Management is actually who paid for it. And it will be more than 9,000 this year. It'll be more like 10,000 because they sent us message saying that the fees were going up. So again, these are the things that Cascade Management pays for. There's been audits. There's at least 3 audits that are done every year. Then the state does one every 3 years. And it's all put into and out of the Cascade Management money.
So steps forward. First step would be to appoint the folks that applied to be on the board, correct?
I would think so.
And then you also need someone who's going to call the board meetings. I'm not going to do this. If we're going to have Zoom meetings, somebody else is going to have to do it. I am not going to do this. I barely know how to get into my computer, and I'm not going to start setting up Zoom meetings and make the announcements and everything. Somebody else is going to have to do it. Won't be me.
Does the Mason County Board want to modify the housing authority bylaws to include an ex officio non-voting member?
Wouldn't they have to do that?
That's what.
Yeah, they'd have to do it, but if it's one of us, we'd have to agree, I would think.
Yeah, well, I hope.
But that would be after the changes have been made, correct?
Well, I'd rather us know whether we want to, because if we don't want to agree to that, we don't want to send them out to make that change.
I would be agreeable to that. I think it would be helpful as an interim strategy, to at least to not vote, but to have an opportunity to sit in on the discussions and provide some insight, especially since the majority, or at least would be new at this point. We don't want to lose the history, and we want to, I think it would be important to show commitment to the commission to actually solving this problem along with the Housing Authority Board.
Yeah. And if the bylaws, if they decide to change the bylaws to allow it to be chaired that way, it could be structured in a different way to get them started over a couple of years.
Okay, the bylaws already have the language of a director or a secretary that is a non-voting member of the board. We set one up several years ago. She worked in the health department, and within a very short period of time, she was let go. And so, I mean, that it is there, the language is there. We made the amendment to the bylaws to allow it to happen, and it seemed to be working for a few months, and then that person was let go, and then we were told that the county couldn't support us in any way. And that was that's the way it's been for a long time now.
But Kathy, at that time, I was here when that stuff was happening, and what for the other commissioners, what happened is this secretary started signing documents and was putting the county at risk by being the fiduciary, basically, and the ones making decisions on even monies and stuff that they shouldn't have been doing.
Right.
It put us in danger.
The chair of the committee had left, and then the vice chair had disappeared. And so there were actually just two of us sitting there looking at each other, had no idea what was going on, and had no one to tell us about it. So it was a mess. It was, I agree, it wasn't right, but it's the way it went.
But if it was set up to where an ex officio came in just to chair the meetings and run the meetings, I think you'd be able to keep that continuity going in that structure, as long as it's done for several years, and it may continue. We all serve on different boards where we do different things. I have a cemetery, or Mason County Memorial. Basically, it's a cemetery board. One of the reasons why we're there is to make sure they keep going. Sometimes we take the chair in order to restructure it, keep it moving, and then you step back after you get it established and let them do their thing. I think this may be one of those opportunities.
That would be great.
I'm good with having a member of the commission be on that board. And I think we need to get it back to a functioning board.
So if we do this, can you bring that forward, Kathy, to your board, to your new board, to see if they'd be interested in that?
Yes, but you're going to have to give me somebody who's going to set up the meeting. A Zoom meeting, I'm assuming. We're not going to meet face to face, right?
You could.
Could what?
Meet face to face.
I don't know.
Well, it's small enough. It's small enough just if we were to set you up with our facility here, just to have a meeting where you're fully separated from everybody.
I think at this time, why don't we just stick with Zoom?
Except for she doesn't know how to do it.
Well, no, but I think that one of the new board members could probably handle that.
Or, I mean, Shelley from Public Health had been acting as a
Shelley can do the work. There's no doubt. Shelley knows what to do.
So I think, that might be one. I mean, that just might be one simple way to get this going is, just have Shelley set it up for them and let it go from there.
Sounds like a good plan.
Works for me.
So then, commissioners, how do we want to handle the applications that we received? I would be comfortable making an appointment at next Tuesday's meeting, unless there's a desire to hold interviews.
I know both of them, and they're actually working in some of the housing for the veterans. They have knowledge of it. They have knowledge of working within the governments. I think they're great candidates, personally.
I would feel very comfortable putting them on the agenda to accept them.
Okay. Yeah, same here. So maybe we can move that piece forward. In the interim, have Shelley begin to figure out with Kathy a meeting date, or a couple meeting dates that would work, and get that information churned out to the new appointees.
That would be great. We usually meet the first Wednesday of the month.
Okay. And then commissioners, do we want to have staff come back with a little bit more information on what our ability to put some funding towards whether it's a half-time or full-time position in the interim as they kind of get themselves reestablished, so that at least we have an idea?
I would like to see him come back with that, but I understand where Frank's coming from when he talks about the full-time, especially in the beginning, but a part-time person can also work more in the beginning and put it through. I think it's a part-time position, as Kathy had said when I looked at it. So I'm hoping we would look at it for part-time, not full-time, except for maybe a little extra in the beginning if we had to.
I would be comfortable with that as well.
And maybe help for a 1 or 2 year period, not a indefinite position. Hire, and I don't want to hire through the county. Just
No, the housing authority would have to do the hiring. The county can facilitate the funding until other sources are found available.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so then we will bring forward next Tuesday the approval of the applicants for the housing authority, as well as work with the housing authority board to modify their bylaws to acknowledge and create an ex officio member non-voting on their board, and then start facilitating new board meetings, hopefully the first Wednesday of December. Anything else?
That sound good to you, Kathy?
I think that's a good start.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathy, and thank you, commissioners.
Frank, I have your number now, so after things are done, maybe end of this week, we can talk, okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
hey, Kathy, I'm sending you a text.
Okay.
Good music.
The clinic is calling me over and over. I gotta go, I'm sure.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks, Kathy.
So the next item we have is the approval of the BOE to hear 2020 assessment year petitions. Is Dawn there? Yes.
Morning, commissioners. The assessor, Patty McLean, has certified the assessment rolls for 2020. And we're asking for approval to place on the November 17th consent agenda item for the Board of Equalization to hear the timely filed appeals petitions. At this point, we've got about 150, which is kind of right on par with what we've done last year too. So
now it's just setting the hearing.
yeah, it just actually it's not a hearing for you. It's a approval to grant the Board of Equalization to hear the petitions, to convene for the purpose of hearing petitions.
Yeah, no standard stuff, nothing different than we always do, right?
Exactly.
Good with me.
I'm good.
Yep.
I do have to say, our board members are very grateful for Zoom, and it's working very well for all of them. And for Becky, our staff person who is the clerk of that board. And we will continue to move forward with that in 2021 for hearings.
Great. Sounds good.
That's all I have. I'll move it to next week's or to the 17th agenda then. Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Thanks, Dawn.
Thank you.
Next items, Commissioner, is the adoption of the 2020-2021 SEDS project list. The commission was provided a listing of what those items are, and requesting whether or not to move that forward for adoption.
I'm supportive.
Looks good to me.
Commissioners, I'm supportive as well. Just a thought, some input from both of you about potentially adding the industrial loop for Log Yard Road for connectivity onto the bottom of the planning phase, the planning side of the list.
I have no issue with that, putting it as a Mason County Public Works project. And are they comfortable with that?
I haven't had that conversation with them, but since it ended up on our 6-year tip, and I think about that in terms of the work you're doing, Commissioner, with the Gorst Group.
Yeah, no, like I said, I have no issue with it at all. I'm just wondering, Jennifer, is there an issue with putting something new after it's already been out and around with everybody that you've done?
No, once it becomes, so as it sits right now, it's been adopted by the EDC. It moves to the county to become adopted. So once you guys adopt it, we can add anything to it. It just goes through you instead of through the EDC and then the county.
So you have no problem with us adding that first and then sending it back? Or
no? I have no problems. That extends it. If you add it before you adopt it, it would go back to the EDC for approval, and then we would come back to you again.
Yeah, that was what I was worried about.
But there's no problem adding it after we've adopted it.
Correct. And I can work with Loretta on getting the application or however we want to move forward with that. And then it would just be a letter from the EDC with a recommendation to go ahead and add this project, specifically wherever we want to put it into that list.
Okay, I'm good with that. I'm good with whatever is the simplest way to do it. So,
as am I. So, if we don't mind, we'll move forward. But Jennifer, if you could start working to put that on for.
Will do. I'll reach out to Loretta and we'll get it ready for addition.
Great. I'm good as well.
Great. Thank you.
Commissioners.
Well, she speaks. Hi, Loretta.
Hi, good morning, if I may. Prior to vacation last week, Mike and I and Dave were discussing this as a potential project as well. So absolutely, we'll get together with Jennifer and get rolling on an application.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, Loretta, and commissioners. Next item we have is the EDC's request for $90,000 from the 09 funding for their 2021 contract.
If you want, I'll jump in. I've always, I shouldn't say I fought against it. I've always been very, very conservative when it comes to this. Over the years, I've been agreeable to a little touch here, a little touch there, but I can tell you this year they have exceeded their value and their worth. They have shown how impressive they are compared to what it was in the past, where it used to be an enterprise that was great at helping people to move paperwork through. This is a whole new type of organization, and this particular application has my absolute full support for the first time since I've been a commissioner. And I think it's money well spent. And by doing this and allowing them the ability to have somebody else come on, they're going to be able to expand on the other things they're going to be able to do when we're not dealing with COVID. So just letting the other commissioners know, this is the one time in all these years that I fully support a sizable increase in their budget.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we have the capacity in 09 to do this, number one. Number two, just Jennifer, you can maybe just briefly go over what capacity this will increase with the EDC and what it might look like, for folks as if this is approved.
Sure. As we're meeting with our state representatives and our even on a national level, economic recovery for the COVID impact, they're looking at a fast rate, 3 years. It's looking closer to 5. So what we're scoping is the potential to add services to continue supporting those businesses as we move through the economic recovery. So we're looking at an additional employee to help with the business retention efforts that we have. We've got, as we stand, 4,500 businesses in Mason County. And while we've reached out to a lot and relied on our partners to help us reach out to a lot, the about 800 businesses that we've spoken to in the last 8 months is only a fraction of what we can reach. So that additional person in the office helping us be able to distribute our messages, helping get the funding dollars out that we have, different resources for training and for helping those businesses get into a better place where they can actually survive these economic downturns or these emergencies as they come up. That's where we're seeing the focus is really, we still have the recruitment side of it, but this is really focused on retention efforts for our businesses that are currently here. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah,
Jennifer, can you share with them the hours that you guys mentioned extra that you had to pick up this year?
We calculated out the additional overtime. We don't get paid for it. So our volunteer hours for additional work that we've had, and between Karn and I, it's roughly about 350 additional hours over the last 6 months each, and that doesn't include the last month or the months moving forward. So we definitely have the work that we can move on to somebody else, and hopefully reach a more even keel in how we're reaching out to those businesses.
I support this 100%. You guys have definitely proven your worth. Your value. I hear from businesses and they are so appreciative of the two of you and how hard you've dedicated the countless hours. And it's not just, centered in our one incorporated city, it's the entire county. And so you guys are amazing, and I support this.
I appreciate that.
That statement was so accurate. It used to be you go through the communities in North Mason and ask about the EDC. They didn't know what you were talking about. You'd be hard pressed walking into a business asking them about the EDC and them not having an idea or a clue what it is, if not knowing who to contact. That's a huge change, and I'm so impressed.
So then what I'll do is bring that forward for next Tuesday for adoption on their contract.
Please.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Jennifer.
And thank you guys. It really is a partnership. You helping us get out that information and being able to direct those businesses back to us. It's a huge circle and it really helps. Thank you.
Next item, commissioners, is with Ross. Ross is bringing forward the replacement on the Kubota tractor.
Good morning, commissioners. At the last commissioners meeting I believe it was on the 19th of October, we had a discussion about the tractor for the Parks and Trails Department. And I was asked to try to look at some other comparable tractors for a professional tractor, or not a non-residential commercial tractor is what we were looking at. That's what the Kubota L47. So we looked at two other ones that we could find that are comparable, that are known names that look to be halfway decent. a Yalmar, and also a Mahindra. As you see those, I supplied you with a list of their comparables that are there. Cost factor, the Kubota still looking at a cost of $50,114. The next is the Yalmar, which is $47,366, and then the Mahindra, which is $45,630. So it looks like the difference cost factor wise is about $4,500 difference. The one thing that I looked at too was the location of the dealership. The dealership for the Kubota is here local in Shelton. The Elmar and also the Mahindra are up in Olympia for them. We also looked at the availability for parts besides just going to a dealership to get parts for each. And the Kubota was very, very easy to get parts from. As a matter of fact, we just purchased some parts for our old tractor currently because it broke down yet again. So they were able to get those locally. So that made a difference there for those guys. So what we're looking at here is a agreement for us to put out a sealed bid request, because these are actually over the $50,000, which is the threshold for a sealed bid from the county's policy for purchasing. And I'd like to get the approval to put out a sealed bid. I think for $4,500 difference between all three of these, that we go with the one that is local, and I would recommend the Kubota tractor, and we can put that out as a Kubota to people on MRSC that do sell tractors and see what we can get on price wise.
I'm supportive. Hopefully we get it right here local.
Amen.
Agreed. I'm good with that.
I'm okay with that. We own a Mahindra, but and we've never had any issues with service, but I'm okay with a Kubota.
So, hey guys, something just to bring up. You know how actually, I don't know if we've ever given one away since Sharon has been on board. You know how the Mason Transit Authority for $1 gives a van away to certain nonprofits that could use it and stuff. Currently, I sit on a board for the commission, not for myself, the Shelton Memorial Park Board, which is the cemetery board up here. If that's possible for us to consider doing something like that for this equipment that we're no longer going to use, that would probably be well appreciated by an organization that's barely surviving up there.
Is that different than a surplus?
Huh?
Is that different than surplusing?
It's surplusing with a different thing to it. You're allowed to give to nonprofits for less, just like I was explaining how we do at the transit. We can give it for $1 because there's certain things that are beneficial to the community.
I have no problem with that at all.
But I'm wondering if the other commissioners have an issue and if we could look into how transit does it so we could do it right if we do decide to do that.
I would be 100% in support of that.
No, absolutely. If anyone can use a tractor or a backhoe, it's probably them.
So Ross, could you call Mason Transit and see what it takes for them to do their $1 gifting? And
Sure.
I'll get a hold of the others on the board.
Sure, not a problem at all. And I will go ahead and get that out to the people on MRSC and get that going as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Do you mind if I interrupt again? This is Jennifer Beierle. So with that, the estimate that I had at last time when we briefed on 1019 was that parks would need about $6,000 in their budget in order to do this purchase. Do you think that it will come in 2020, Ross?
I believe I talked to Frank about this too, that REIT dollars can also help pay for this purchase until it'll be used on REIT projects also. So I'm thinking we do a split of what we have and then whatever is left charged to REIT. if
Okay.
that sounds good. And
Yeah,
Frank?
and I think your budget could handle that. Then I just wanted to make sure we have an all-inclusive budget amendment. So.
Oh, right on, right on.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thanks, Ross. Last item we have is the change order number 2 for the park irrigation project.
That's me also. Sorry about that. We're looking at a second change order for our MCRA park irrigation. This is actually good news. You guys will kind of like this. From change order number 1, what we did was originally the pump that was designed or that was in the design for MCRA's irrigation needed 3-phase electric. We did not have these 3-phase electric at MCRA. We got an estimate, and the estimate was between 50 and 80,000 to put in 3-phase. After we stood up, after we fell down, we decided there has to be something else we can do because that's a lot of money. And what we actually found out was the company that makes the pump makes a converter that takes regular 2-phase and changes it to 3-phase. And it costs $8,000, actually closer to 9 when you get everything to it. So we have saved that money that we were going to put out into the 3-phase. And what we were looking at is putting that money into doing the rest of the irrigation on the interior core of the park itself, because the original was only for the fields. So we would like to do a changeover, which would be approximately valued at, say, $16,000 of including what we saved from the REIT 3 to finish the entire park and have it done completely with irrigation instead of having to put that off onto another REIT or another RCO grant or something like that. Now we can do it all together. It'll all be on the same system. So it means the same computer system that it goes on for turning on and off and everything like that. And it's only looking at using about $15,589 out of REIT additional. So I think that's a pretty good savings on that. We saved $70,000. We're still going to spend it, but we're going to get a lot more out of it. And I just wanted to kind of get you guys up to par on that of what we're doing. Both of these are under a limit that I can sign for to do, but I kind of wanted to, run it past you guys and see what you guys think.
Yeah, it sounds like a great opportunity. As long as we have the capacity in REIT 2 to handle it, I think it makes a lot of sense.
We do. We have that capacity.
I think it's a good idea. Just make sure you don't turn the sprinklers on when they're having games.
Yeah, that does cause a few issues there every once in a while. Yeah.
I too am supportive. I want to hit on something else though, Ross, if you don't mind, unless the commissioners completely disagree. We've been on a holding pattern for so many different projects. We just haven't even been looking at them. We've expended a lot of money on MCRA. We've been having conversations as commissioners about some of our REIT projects for separating certain dollars for certain areas yearly so we can get on some projects. I'd sure like to ask for you and your group to be prepared to start to go after grant funding and stuff for projects like a skate park, a concrete skate park in North Mason, soccer fields up above the Sand Hill fields that we own the property on, the boat launch in Union, the ball fields there in that park. I can't never remember the name of that park up in Union above. What is it?
Union Park.
Oh. Boy, do I feel funny. Okay, so with that being said, unless the commissioners disagree, I'd like to see if we can't start to bring that stuff back to life this year and actually be prepared to go after those grants and not just do the same thing over and over again. We've been missing that for several years now. I'd like to change that this year.
I'm glad you brought that up because in the soon as I can on the next, hopefully in December, I'll be able to give this to you. It's our RE2 project list. And there's a lot of those things on that project. Our next RCO grant, I've already started on looking at the soccer field for up there at Sand Hill. I've talked to Bob Droll. He's already got drawings for it. He's got all that stuff ready to go, which is fantastic. That's already a boost up on it. And they can give us kind of the guesstimates on cost and stuff for that also. So as soon as the RCO grant opens up for a large grant, I'm going to try to grab that. I want to make sure that that property that we're looking at is owned by the county, and that we can do a forestation. What do you call when you cut trees down? Log. That we can log that and get stumpage out and everything like that for there. Get it all prepped at least.
With that being said, though, I'd hope you bring it to the commission for the commission to help decide where we want to go with it and expend, a million here, million there. We had a project years ago that we dropped on the Union Boat Ramp. It's kind of obvious after this year, as Commissioner Shutty was talking about, it's time that thing gets brought back. Even though it was hard and we ran into some problems, I think we could have fought through and at least got some of that stuff fixed, and it would have been greatly needed this year. So if you could bring those projects as an actual briefing to talk to us, so we as commissioners can have that conversation with you, it'd be appreciated.
Yeah, I'll bring up the goods and the bads of it and how we can try to look at those. That'd be perfect. Love to. Excellent. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Ross.
Thank you, Ross.
And thank you, commissioners. That's all that we have today. Thank you.
That it?
That's it. A long one today.
We're 2 hours behind. No big deal.
Commissioners, do you have anything for Frank or anyone else?
No, but I will need a few minutes.
Okay. Let's take 5 minutes. Let's be back at 10:58. Sorry, guys. All right, Dave, take her away.
Okay. So have a number of items here. We're going to just kind of zoom through this, so to speak. See what I did there. Okay. Our first person is Michael. I just saw him there a minute ago. And it looks like he dropped off.
Yeah, I don't see him in the Zoom room.
Yeah, he was there, and now he's gone. So the item is to appoint or reappoint 2 members to 2 new 3-year terms on the Mason County Historic Preservation Commission, and to appoint 1 member to serve the 1-year balance of a term that will become vacant at the end of November. The executive summary explains we have currently 2 seats expiring on November 30th. A 3rd seat will become vacant as another member resigns. So we're asking to have this put on the next action agenda to fill these positions.
Good with me.
I'm good.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll let Michael know. Okay, next item is Alex.
Yes, good morning. So as we near the end of the year, environmental health, we're working on our billings for annual certifications and facilities. This is also the time of year we address any EH fee increases per the 2013 resolution, so we can make sure all our billings reflect the correct rates. So this year we're looking at a 1.7% increase. We also round our fees down to the nearest $5 for convenience. I've attached the draft schedule for you all to review, and also a copy of the resolution. If anyone has any questions, let me know, or opposition. Otherwise, we would like to move this forward onto the next agenda, which I believe is November 17th.
It's good with me.
Yes.
I'm good as well.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
All right. Next item is one of mine. and it is the Chehalis Basin Partnership Addendum to the response to the 2018, yeah. 2018 Streamflow Restoration Act. And in the executive summary, we talked about the Chehalis Basin Watershed Management Plan was developed back in the, earlier in the 20s, 2004, was approved by the counties, the tribes, all those involved, those community partners back in 2004. And in the bill that came out of the 2018 Streamflow Restoration Act, we had to go back and do an update to this. So those of you familiar with water resource work, that's RCW 9094 directed us to do this. This is a 202 planning document, so it didn't require a new plan. It just updates the plan that was currently in place. So what we have before you is the draft with the draft language in it. Now this language is what we're going with the exception of some minor fixes in grammar and some sentence structure things. So those will be coming out. That's the only reason why this is still listed as draft. And I think that gets approved on the 17th. So what we would like to do is to put this in the action agenda for the 17th to reserve a hearing for December 8th.
Davis, Kevin, I'm good with that. I think, I think this is a strong plan. Does this include the rooftop project that you had been working on for the other RIAs, or is that not applicable to this one?
No, this one doesn't. Primarily our piece of, and I just spotted a typo in my resolution. Most of the area that's in RIA 22, RIA 23 for us is timberland and national forest. So not that much impact for what we're doing around the rooftop project. It might be noted though that this plan includes no policy recommendations. We felt it was less productive to do policy recommendations and stick to what 9094 had, which was address consumptive use, account for consumptive use. And we have enough projects in here to reach that net ecological benefit.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Good to me. I'm good with putting it on the agenda.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Moving on to the next one is reclassification request. And we've brought this before you before, making another look at this. In looking at COVID and looking at all of our management positions through the adjustments document that I wrote back in June, and we've made changes to and implemented some pieces of that. We're asking to reclassify our public health finance manager to a public health finance administrator. These documents were submitted to HR and up through Frank's office. We received a response from Frank's office saying that they felt it wasn't appropriate. I did exercise the piece of our policy manual that says that I can bring it to the board with the negative recommendation, but to present it anyway, and I'm bringing that forward. I feel that since the department reorganized back in 2016, late 2015, there's been all of our other managers went to level 33. We're trying to get the finance manager up to that position as well. So I did include within the documents my reasoning, as well as some of the things that were done back in the that time period, written by Bill Kinney, around promotions and around reclassifications. One thing that we don't have as a county really is, even though it's talked about in the policy manual, is a promotion policy. We don't have one. It's a reclassification policy. And that's something we need to look at. But I would like the commission to go ahead and look at this reclassification request. And I'm hoping we move forward on it.
I'll jump in. I'll go first. I hesitate to do any promotions or do any changes at this time. There's a lot of work that we need to do, in my opinion, on the classifications of staff throughout the county. I don't know that we have a very good system for doing things, and so I hesitate to do anything until we get the other classifications fixed. Our charts are not consistent, and if you look at job classifications, job structuring, we have a lot of work to do, and so I would hesitate to do anything until we get that job classification fixed and we have some equity across the county.
Dave, I'll go ahead. This, in reading it again, it still doesn't meet a reclassification. It just doesn't meet that level. You and I have been talking here recently. Not having a promotion policy has hurt our county, I think, for quite a while. The compensation strategy, it's my firm belief that here in the new year, it's going to be one of the things that we're tackling first. So please don't be disheartened. Let your staff know that we will be considering other options, I believe, here shortly.
Sorry, I couldn't hit the right button quick enough. Yeah, I'll defer to the other commissioners on this. It sounds like Commissioner Trask has some ideas that I hope she brings forward on what she'd like to see happen, and definitely entertain that conversation and agree that this has been an issue that we've had to tackle. And as Commissioner Netherland mentioned, hopefully we'll be getting after that, as soon as we can in the new year.
Okay, so then I will take it. We will not put that on the action agenda. And I'm looking forward to addressing this. In the Army, we had a saying, mission first, men always. And I'd like to make sure that we adhere to that here as well. So I'm certainly interested in looking at a promotion policy or some sort of mechanism where we can get some equity, like Commissioner Trask mentioned. So.
And I don't think anybody disagrees with you. The problem that we have on this one is it doesn't fit the one policy we do have to work with for reclass. But we do, I think we all agree we need to do something about some type of motion policy or compensation strategy for everybody here shortly.
Right. Well, you always expect to hear me sticking up for my folks. That's just the way I roll. So.
Well, and we appreciate that. And that's what we're here trying to stick up for all of Mason County, and we have to make it.
Oh, I understood completely. I tend to focus on my department. That's what I'm here to do. So, okay. So moving on, if that's okay, we have Todd Parker. We're talking about Emergency Solutions Grant, COVID-19 ESG Round 2 funding. Todd, are you there?
I am here. Hello. Good morning, commissioners and everyone. So we have Community and Family Health has two briefings. The first one is the Emergency Solutions Grant. We had our first round of funding that started back in July, and we subcontracted with Crossroads Housing and Shelton Family Center. And then we just received our second round of funding. So the first round of funding, I should say, was about $165,000. This second round is $852,048, and we had proposals submitted. So there's two parts to this briefing. The first part is to accept the Department of Commerce amendment in that full amount of $852,048. So that would be an ask to move that to the action agenda on November 17th.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, I respect the work of the Housing and Behavioral Health Authority board members on this, and comfortable moving forward.
Same.
Okay.
Okay. And then second part then is the subcontracting these funds, so that the last 2 months we've discussed this at our Housing and Behavioral Health Advisory Board, and out of the last meeting we formed a work group to finalize just some of the nuances in the budgets. And so we had again 4 proposals submitted, and the Housing and Behavioral Health Advisory Board recommended funding 3 of the agencies. So 2 of them, again, we already have contracts with, which is Shelton Family Center and Crossroads Housing. And it's to expand some shelter capacity predominantly. And then also Turning Point had submitted a proposal for additional shelter operations and case management within their shelter. And so the question is if we can have at least the amendments on the 17th action agenda. Might need a little bit more time on the contract piece, even though the next agenda item isn't until December 8th. So I guess my question is, do you need to see the amendments at a briefing, or can we just move them forward to the action agenda?
Oh, a quick question. Would we need the contracts to approve the other contract? That makes sense.
Not entirely. I'll try to recap. So we've done this before, where we've accepted the Department of Commerce amendment, and then the same same action agenda. We've approved the subcontracting of the funding.
And so we have done them separately, or are they typically done at the same time?
We've done them at the same time.
Frank, can you let us or tell me, with this, is this doable as separate items, or do they need to be the same on the same or in the same item?
I'm sorry, commissioners. I'd have to take a quick look at it online, and then I can give you an answer in just a little bit.
Okay, we'll give you 5 minutes.
Commissioner, I'm usually more comfortable with it as long as I see it at least at the same time. I don't like the idea much of doing one and then we'll see what it looks like later.
Yeah, I would be good at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah, they only just to recap. So two are amendments to contracts, and then one would be a new contract. So it would be the new subcontract with Turning Point. They'd probably be bringing forth at another briefing at the 23rd to have approved on December 8th. But since we already have contracts in place that have been approved by the 2 agencies, I'm just asking to be able to amend it.
Yeah, I'm fine with that process since the contracts are already in place and we know what the amendment amounts are and to whom. I'm good with that, and then doing a separate one for Turning Point because it's a new contract. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm fine with Todd's recommendation on that.
As long as I see the other contracts that we're amending at the same time, I just want them in my hand. I don't have to be rebriefed on it. Just want it in my hand, please.
Yep, I'm good with separate.
Okay. And when you say that, Commissioner, do you mean like in the briefing? I mean in the action agenda packet?
Yeah.
I mean have the.
Yeah, I just like
definitely.
what I'm
Absolutely.
voting for. I don't mind putting it on there. That's not where my issue is. My issue is just I won't vote on it if I don't have it. I like to see it.
Yep. All right. No, they will definitely. The amendments will definitely be part of on the 17th.
Okay. So
Okay.
Our next item is ERAP funding, and again, that's Todd.
Yeah. Then the eviction rent assistance program is going well. So so far we've had 62 households have been assisted with that, and Crossroads has been one of the subcontractors. We also have Shelton Family Center and North Mason Resources, and North Mason Resource has assisted about 10 of those households, 9 to 10 of those households out of the 62. Crossroads has about 37 already in the queue. So what we bring forth is, and it's in the packet, is amendment with Crossroads because they're ready to go for additional funding. And so it'd be to move that amendment to our November 17th action agenda.
Yeah, that's good with
me.
Cool. And then the second part of that is just to kind of lob it back to more management with one of the subcontractors that had some challenges with, and so we want to kind of figure out some next steps with that.
So that one's on hold.
Well, I think what Todd's asking for is some direction here. So one of our contractors has had 3 audits. Is that correct, Todd?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the audits have not been coming back, let's say clean. Some challenges in the same mistakes being made over more than once. So what we're asking to do is to fund up Crossroads that's already doing work, and this is in the Belfair community. So we want to make sure the Belfair community is not left out of receiving funds and making sure that we get assistance piece done. So we're looking to consolidate that over to Crossroads. I think that is the nut of what Todd is looking for us to talk about.
And let me get on. I'm okay with that as long as we audit often to make sure that the monies are getting spent up there like they're supposed to in the region. So keep an eye on it early as it is being funded to make sure it's happening. If not, we need to adjust. Somehow we need to get those dollars up there. So, you know, I'm not, it's sad that we go through all this and that it becomes an issue, but it is what it is. So as long as the dollars are getting spent, I'll be supportive. If not, then we'll have a different conversation.
Okay.
And that's one piece I can assure you on is Crossroads is already just from the outreach that Coordinated Entry is doing at the food bank, the hub, and other locations, not only in Belfair, but also Hoodsport and other parts of the county. I mean, they've already funded people through the eviction rent assistance program in Belfair, as well as Hoodsport and other parts of the county. So they've actually already doing it.
But bear in mind, I want a body up there. That's important to me.
Yeah, that's through their outreach. So they're physically going there.
Yeah, that's very cool. I've heard good things about that too.
Okay. Any more questions? All right. Well, Commissioner Trask, I think that brings us to the end of this piece.
All right, great.
Just a reminder, we do have Board of Health, and I think that is next week.
Yep.
So Board of Health packets and agendas will be going out late today, early tomorrow morning.
All right, sounds good. Does anybody else have anything for DCD?
I do not.
I do not, but I got to tell you that picture of Peter Jones, I wish I looked that good in a picture these days.
All right. Well, thank you, Commissioners.
All right, thanks. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too.
I'm glad, Commissioner Netherland, that you like my photo there.
I miss your hat. You used to wear it all the time when I first met you.
Yeah, I still have it. I still wear it to conventions, but the first one got a little beat up, so I had to replace it, and I'm being a little more careful about where I wear it.
That's very nice. I just finally got a good look at it. Good job. All right, let's move on to Public Works since we're running a bit behind. Loretta?
Good morning.
Morning.
We have Two items for you, commissioners. Our annual Title VI agreement update. It's a report that we submit every year as a result of receiving federal funds. And then we also have an agreement that we want to execute with the state of Washington for some updated GIS imagery. So the first item.
I'm supportive.
I bet. Of all of the above, Commissioner, or GIS?
No, I'm good on all the above.
Hey, way to cut to the chase. Would you like me to provide any other information, or commissioners, any other comments?
Loretta, I would just say don't pitch past the wind.
I agree.
No, I think it's great. Go forth.
Okay, we will go forth. That sounds awesome. You just made up some time, commissioners. Good job. Anything else? I guess I've got a follow up for getting together with Jennifer. And we were planning to get together with Kitsap and City of Bremerton also to talk about the industrial loop planning up north. And we also will follow up with Ross and lend any support we can regarding Union boat launch improvements or other improvements that may have some public work, that if Public Works can help in that regard. Glad to do that. And then, commissioners, if you could just spend a couple minutes, Mike's got a couple of updates for you as well, if that's all right.
Good morning.
Morning.
All the unmuffled brake signs are in place, McCreevy and OBH, so we've got that completed. We do plan on putting some Jersey barrier. We've laid out some Jersey barrier for the trails in the road. There's two stretches there. One's about 170 feet and one 120 feet that will be installed soon. And then the Sand Hill playground signs, the bases, about half the bases have been set, and they'll be working on that this week too to start installing those signs. We did have a meeting with WashDOT last week concerning the Hood Sport speed display signs. They are going to move forward on that. They are as fast as WashDOT moves. So by the end of this month, I'm thinking they're going to have some signs up. So one other thing is, so I tell you what we did. Now I'm going to ask you what I want. So there's an asphalt roller we've been renting, and the roller's been working really good. We've been, as we do our paving projects. Jeremy has got communication with the vendor, and the vendor would like to sell the machine and to us, and we'd like to purchase it. So, but he also would has said that they would actually take the rental price off the price of the vehicle. And we would actually trade in another little roller attachment we had for the skid steer. So yeah, I know it's a little confusing, but the ideal is we have it, we're going to try to have it budgeted for next year. They said that if they would hang on to it until that point. And so next briefing, I was thinking about actually bringing it to the board very specifically.
Perhaps you can set it up to where we can look at what the cost is over the last 5 years and what we'd be looking at renting it over the next several years.
Yep, we can do that. So.
And this was an item that was listed in our budget proposal,
it is
correct,
in the
for
budget
2021. Yeah.
And we're looking for the used one to get a better deal.
Mm-hmm.
So we will bring that to the board in the next briefing.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, commissioners. Any goodies for us?
Just a request that soon that you can have it individually or through our briefings, but I'd sure like to get an update and know exactly what you have done when it comes to moving forward with Razor Road. when it comes to moving forward with Romance Hill, Log Yard, the bypass. I'd like to know, because we've been so disconnected, not seeing each other anymore, that it's been quite a while since we've actually had a breakdown of what exactly is happening.
Absolutely. We were just meeting with, well, both consultants regarding Romance Hill in particular.
Well, and you don't have to do it now. I'm talking about here in the near future. I'd like a detailed breakdown.
Yeah. Anyway, talking about the need for a work session to bring commissioners up to speed on all of the activities in the North End.
Good.
Yeah, I think that would be great. I think it'd be really helpful.
Yep, I agree. I think that would be very interesting.
All right.
So one real quick thing, just a huge thank you, Loretta and Mike, to our sign shop guys for getting those signs out on McGreevy. I got a couple of text messages over the weekend, just saying thanks to you guys for getting them out. I think it's much appreciated by the community there, and I'm sure similarly on Old Belfair Highway as well. So just wanted to say thank you.
Great, thank you. It's nice to hear that the community is appreciative.
It's always good to get some kudos, huh?
Yes.
Nothing. We have anything else for Public Works?
Have a great day, guys.
All right, thank you. You as well.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to Superior Court. Judge Goodell.
Hello, I'm trying. Just give me a moment. There I am. Good morning, commissioners.
Good morning.
Good morning. I am providing you information on our one item this morning, and that is we have been invited to participate in a court interpreter reimbursement program. Our superior courts use interpreters throughout the day over various languages, and the administrative office of the courts has a program that will end in end of June, but it's a reimbursement program for monies that we already spent. And I think our budget this coming year is a little bit more than $30,000. And so the reimbursement program will maximize at $5,824. In order for us to take advantage of the program, we will need to have the commission approve the interagency agreement, which has been provided to us, which was part of our briefing materials today. And so our request today is for the commission to approve the agreement, which will result in an additional revenue of $5,824 to be applied to our budget. And I'm willing to answer any questions.
I'm supportive.
I'm supportive as well. Great opportunity. Thanks, Judge.
Sorry to make you wait for that, Judge.
Well, you know, it's always interesting to hear what else is going on in the county.
Well, we appreciate any reimbursement that the county can get. So good job.
Okay. So then finally, we want to have the matter placed on the November 17th action agenda for the signing. So that will meet our deadline. Our deadline is to have it signed before the end of the month.
Yep. Sounds good.
Okay. Well, that's the only matter that I have this morning. Thank you for that. I'm going to stay on. I know that Mr. Jones is going to be talking about his request, and if there's any questions you have of the court of the Uniform Guardianship Act I would be glad to answer any. Outside of that, it's his budget, not mine. So,
Actually, if you don't mind, Your Honor, because this is based on your interpretation, I would like to hear your thoughts up front on the interpretation, the way you're reading it.
Well, the statute deals with a phased-in approach to the Uniform Guardianship Act. It's a major rehaul of the Guardianship Act that doesn't only just cover minors, but also goes on to the regular, what we all would consider guardianship matters. And so the phase-in is January 1, 2021 is the first phase-in that we're looking to, and that deals with the minors. And then we have the next phase-in, which is January 1st, 2022, which deals with the other areas of the guardianship statute. And so the issue with regard to the assigned attorney, deals with statutory requirements under RCW 11-13200. And the statute has court-appointed attorneys for some circumstances dealing with the child and some circumstances dealing with each of the parents. And I don't want to take too much of Mr. Jones's thunder here, but the overall look here is what we used to have as our third-party or non-parent custodial actions. That all goes away. And so these are petitions to have non-parents to have custody of minors. Well, it's now considered a guardianship instead of a custodian. So the statute comes in with a host of all sorts of new requirements, new needs, and what part of that is the attorney portion. And that phase-in begins January 1, 2021. So to be consistent, the statute does not phase in a portion that deals with appointment of an attorney for a child only, and then later with regard to the parents, it all phases in at the same time, and that's the interpretation I think that Mr. Jones was looking to. So, but he could probably speak to that as well. So anyway, if you have other questions, I'd rather just sit back and let Mr. Jones speak his piece, and if you have other questions about any issues that I can answer on behalf of the court, I'd be glad to do that.
All right. Peter, take her away.
Well, as you just heard from Judge Goodell, and thanks, Your Honor, for kind of starting the ball rolling there. The services that I thought were going to be required in 2022 are going to be required in 2021 instead. Judging by the open caseload that I was provided by Ms. Lockwood, and there's some question of how we're going to transition the current third-party custody cases or non-parental custody cases into this new form of guardianship case. But it looks like in January, early February, there's going to be about a half attorney's caseload dropped on our office from uniform guardianship cases that I wasn't expecting as of 3 weeks ago. That is unfortunate, and it requires us to kind of change up how we're going to go about appointing attorneys. My initial impression of the statute, and I linked those, was that we would have to deal with minors and minors only in terms of appointment of counsel in 2021. And that I could have just handled on my own. That would be a couple of cases because you only get appointed an attorney if you're over the age of 12. But as soon as we start getting into appointing attorneys for parents, we're talking about a pretty significant caseload. Now, the Office of Public Defense, the Washington Defenders Association, this is all so incredibly new that they haven't put actual caseload limit numbers on this. And so when I say half an attorney's caseload, I am sticking my thumb out like this and kind of comparing it to our dependency docket, where it is very, very, very similar in a number of ways. It is representing a parent against someone who is trying to take custody of their children because of some sort of malfeasance or issue. It's just a matter of, instead of it being the government trying to take the child, it is some non-governmental, non-parent actor trying to take the child. Grandparent, uncle, something like that. But the cases do tend to be similar, and so I am betting that the standards that eventually get updated for this are going to look a heck of a lot like the standards that are currently in place for dependency attorneys. And so I kind of based all of my guesswork and all of my numbers off that, including the amount that's paid to contract attorneys. Now, parental representation and dependencies, we don't pay for. That is handled through the State Office of Public Defense and their Office of Family Representation. And I checked to see if they would be handling this, and no, they are not going to be handling this. This is an entirely unfunded mandate. And so we've got a bunch of cases coming our way. I did the contract amount that I listed, the $150 per case is based on what they are paying attorneys here in Mason County to handle their dependencies. And so that is amounts out of this county, just not out of this county's budget. But it is what is being paid for attorneys to do this sort of work. I listed two options. And I kind of like to think of them as the cheap option and the good option. There is no real cheap way to handle half an attorney's worth of caseload. I don't have that at the moment. But it's either we go with a contract. Contract would work out to be roughly $72,000. And I think we could structure it so that instead of $150 per case per month, we would take the $72,000, which is the ballpark average, and make that the contract. But it's still a significant contract. The advantage of the contract is it's only $72,000. The disadvantage to the contract is that it's only half an attorney. And it's only half an attorney doing exactly this. During my budget briefing, I brought up a number of issues that we were eventually going to have to hire a new counsel for. Those issues are still out there. Those issues are still coming. And if we're going to spend $72,000 to hire to get half an attorney's worth of work, it seems like spending the little extra to get the other half an attorney and have a staff attorney to handle those other problems as well becomes much, much, much more efficient. And so I think in the long run, instead of putting this as a contract service, creating this as a staff service just makes more sense. It handles the ITA cases. We can have it handle therapeutic court cases. We can have it handle this, and we can have it wrap all of those into essentially one package, which is why I proposed having the additional employed position as opposed to the contract. But I wanted to make sure the commission saw both. I also identified a couple of offsets. One of them is an offset that's just going to happen, and we may as well put it in the budget, in that we're stepping because Mr. Sergi has announced his going into a semi-retirement, we're going to be saving money on our Deputy 3 position. It's only about $6,000, but we may as well budget for it. The big one is I did, for the first time, include a revenue estimate on ITA. I had mentioned using that to offset the costs of a new employed position. It is a low estimate. It is a $3,000 a month estimate. That's essentially based on 1 quarter's worth of billing. And so it's not accurate, and I tried to air low.
And you haven't put that in before or anything? That's new?
That's new. We have not included that before. I didn't have Q2 at the time I filled out my budget. I didn't have Q2 billed for. And so I did not put it in the budget because I really didn't have a clue at the time I was filling that out. Having gone through Q2, having gone through most of Q3, and I've got a general sense of what Q3 looks like, even though we don't have it billed for yet. We've got it. It looks like $3,000 a month is a pretty conservative estimate. We get $60 for an attorney hour, just like we pay in reimbursement, and that's kind of what it's looking out to be.
So about 40 grand. You're bringing back with the 3,000 and the 36.
A little over, around 42, yeah. And so I'm because there's this additional expense, I made sure to go out and actually get you an estimate on that as well, because I said in my earlier briefing, now I thought that we were going to be doing this for the 2022 budget, not the 2021, that the ITA costs could be used, or the ITA reimbursement could be used to offset at least a portion of the cost of the employee. And I still think that that's true. But regardless of what the commission chooses to do, I think budgeting and the revenue makes sense and is at least something of an offset to the additional cost from the UGA.
Peter, can you explain to me again why? Because there's two effective dates. One is 2021 and one is 2022.
Yes. And it's more confusing than that. Because if you look at the language in, and let me pull it up here, in the second statute I linked, RCW 11-130-915, that tells us what happens in 2021 and 2022. And subsection 2 is where we're looking. This is one of the, this is section 204. And so this falls in that list of sections that fall into section 2, right? And so it says, with respect to minors, sections, and then it lists a bunch of sections, one of which is 201 through 216. And that take effect January 1st, 2021. I read the with respect to minors language to say, with respect to the appointment of counsel for minors, right? With respect specifically to those provisions of the statute involving minors, it happens in 2021. And so that's where I got that. After speaking with Judge Goodell, it's my understanding that the interpretation that's going to come down from the courts is with respect to minors means with respect to the entire section of the statute involving the guardianship of minors, not just those portions of those statutes that involve minors.
Right, so any section that concerns a minor, basically, it is taking effect in 2021.
Yes, so the Uniform Guardianship Act has a number of different guardianship things. Mm-hmm. And one of them is guardianship of minors. There's also guardianship, but there are several other statute portions. Right. And so it's my understanding of the court's interpretation, and all those section statutes do fall into that subsection, which is guardianship of minors. And so it's my understanding that the court's position and the court's orders are going to be based on the idea that with respect to minors means with respect to the guardianship of minors, in which case the court is going to start appointing attorneys for parents come January 2021. Where I thought they would appoint them for minors in 2021 and then adults in 2022. Right. That's where I got tripped up.
Yeah, I can see, because reading through the
yeah.
It's, if you don't look at all the subsections.
The UGA, and I've been looking at it more and more, and I see Judge Goodell is still on the line and could probably confirm this, the UGA is a terribly written statute. It's not good. And it's going to be a lot of,
right.
Whoever we get to deal with is going to be wading into a brand new statute that nobody has any case law on, that some sections may be unconstitutional based on prior case law. And who knows? It's the wild, wild west right now.
Right. I honestly don't envy the attorney that that has the honor of taking over the UGA.
It's going to be interesting, and I want to get someone good for it, right? I need someone who has a mind that can get through this.
Right.
So
Right.
I would, that's kind of one of the reasons I want to use an employed position and not just try and find a contract attorney for it. I very much, I just think the employed position solves a lot more problems, but that's, any other questions? I'm repeating myself at this point.
Have you sent this over and have you spoken with Jennifer?
I've sent this to Jennifer. I haven't had a vocal conversation with her, but we've been emailing. So she's aware of the request and aware of the issues.
Okay.
Peter, first off, thanks. I appreciate you getting this turned around to us from last week. I know it's kind of it's a tight time of the year generally, but this
it was a fast run from a standing start. So I got you what I could as quick as I could.
No, much appreciated. So I'm supportive of moving with the Deputy 3 position. I think that makes the most sense long term. My caveat there is we have a budget workshop this afternoon, and I think we need to have that conversation in the context of the whole budget and what we're trying to accomplish for 21. And moving in this direction, I don't think we have much of a choice but to move in this direction one way or another. And so I think it's just going to be a matter of us making some other tweaks to the budget and that kind of thing so this fits in. So I am supportive pending that conversation this afternoon.
Supportive.
Yep, I look forward to the conversation this afternoon, but I support it. I think it's our only choice.
Okay. Well, I kind of do too. And long term, we are going to need someone else in there, and so we may as well bite that bullet now, as opposed to doing half measures.
Yep.
Any other questions?
No, not from me. Commissioners?
All right.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Peter.
All right. You know how to get a hold of me if you need anything.
You do.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Peter. All right, Commissioners, looks like we are scheduled for a closed session. So we'll meet you in the closed session Zoom room.